How much in fees should an H1B employee pay? Hi, I'm Jim Hacking, immigration lawyer practicing law throughout the United States at our offices in St. Louis, San Diego, and Washington, D.C. Federal law allows a U.S. employer to sponsor a foreign-born worker to work for them in a specialty occupation through a visa called the H1B visa. It's done by filing an I-129 with USCIS, where the employer says that they have a need for this worker, that the worker is qualified, that the occupation is a specialty occupation, that the employee has the qualifications to perform that job, and that the employer promises to pay the prevailing wage to that employee throughout the employment process. And we recently had a question in our Facebook group: how much of the legal fees or the filing fees is the H1B employee themselves supposed to pay? So of course, in any employment-based situation, you have the employer and you have the employee. And so we have an employer who wants to sponsor this foreign worker for an H1B. And the question is, how much does the foreign worker have to pay? Do they have to pay the legal fees? Do they have to pay the filing fees? And I'm going to make this really simple for you. In most situations, the employee is not supposed to pay any of the fees. The reason for this is that federal law is designed to protect the American worker. And what the federal law does not want to happen, what Congress does not want to happen, is for U.S. employers to take advantage of American workers by hiring foreign-born workers at lower wages. They want to make sure that the wages stay steady and that the employer is not taking advantage of either the foreign worker, but more importantly of the American worker, because the American workers vote, and they want to make sure that the employee is getting paid the right salary, so that you can't, pay half as much to an international worker as you do to a U.S. born worker. And the way that they do that is they make the employer figure out what's the prevailing wage in the area. So let's say you have a software developer in Cuyahoga County, Ohio. That employer is going to have to do some data research and figure out what's the salary for that occupation in that county, and they have to promise to pay that. And once they make that promise, if they were to then require the employee to pay all those filing fees and legal fees, which could be thousands of dollars, that might take the employee down below the prevailing wage, and that would therefore negatively impact American workers. So federal law generally prohibits the U.S. Employer to require the employee to pay those fees, and that's why it's to uphold the prevailing wage. So we have a lot of people reach out to our firm and watch our YouTube videos related to H1Bs and the fees that are paid. Now, this can lead to some confusion, and a lot of people are being taken advantage of by U.S. employers who are secretly forcing the employee to pay that H1B fee. If this is going on in your life, you should reach out to us and let us know. I would love to help you take on an employer who is illegally trying to force you to pay the H1B fees. The whistle should be blown. This employer should get in trouble, and you got to, of course, protect yourself and keep your own immigration status intact. But we can certainly have a conversation about whether or not this employer is trying to take advantage of you. Now, I suppose there are some employers who just don't understand how it all works, but most sophisticated employers, if they're hiring foreign workers, they should be able to figure out and understand, and you can even send them this video, that the employer is supposed to pay the legal fees, the employer is supposed to pay the filing fees, and nothing is supposed to be paid by the U.S. The foreign worker. Hope this makes sense. If you have questions, there is an exception. If the employer is paying you way, way, way above the prevailing wage, then in theory you could pay those fees, but I think it's cleaner to actually pay you that lower salary as long as you stay above the prevailing wage and have the employer pay those fees. I think it's just messy when the employee pays it, and it sets you up for problems down the road. The last little piece of this is that if you get hired by an employer and they sponsor you for the H1B and you then leave and they want to recoup those fees, there are mechanisms, certainly by contract, where if you've agreed under contract to take this job and to pay them back for any expenses related to your failure to perform your job on the H1B. In other words, if they pay all these legal fees and then you don't come, then in theory they could come after you. That they can't exact a penalty, but they could get the actual out-of-pocket legal fees and filing fees from you at that point. But again, you want to be really careful about that. And if you have questions about any of this, give us a call, 314-961-8200. Email us, info@hackinglawpractice.com. Be sure to join us in our Facebook group, which is called Immigrant Home. If you like this video, we ask that you please share it out on social, that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that you join us on Tuesdays and Thursdays, usually at noon Central, where I'm answering as many of your immigration law related questions as possible. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.